Joining us today. I'm going to be discussing, ways to streamline your business, both through operations and technology. So we got a couple of folks here on the redirect side, and also a couple of companies and people that we've worked with on projects to help streamline through process reviews. My name is Sam Brodsman. I'm the National Account Executive with Redirect Consulting. I've been with the company for about 4.5 years. I'm joined by my colleagues, Carmen Clark, who is the head of our West Coast Consulting Group, former experience as a controller, and has been working in Yardi and MRI on these types of projects for years now, and Jonathan Bias, who is on our East Coast Consulting team. Expertise with both Yardi and MRI, and really crucial to our business consulting efforts, as well as our robotic process automation efforts. Grace, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the fine folks who are with us today?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Cheng. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the Community Development Trust. We go by CDT. I've been with CDT for the past 3.5 years. My background prior to CDT was in the real estate space, primarily in private equity. At CDT, we're a national provider of debt and equity capital in the affordable housing industry. We have about $2 billion of assets under management with a lean team across each of the departments: acquisitions, asset management, accounting, and finance. Our portfolio mainly consists of debt, mortgage financing, and that was primarily the shop that we were 20 years ago. But in the past 10 years, our portfolio has shifted more towards equity investments. So at the core, CDT is a real estate company with a mission, and our mission is to preserve affordable housing across the U.S.
Thanks, Grace. And Kasey, a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Kasey Uhl. I'm the VP of Accounting at Yes Communities. I've been with Yes about 2.5 years. Yes Communities owns and operates manufactured housing communities. We have about 266 communities right now, with about 75,000 sites in about 18 states. And we are still growing, still actively acquiring. We're at about 600 million in revenue currently, and we utilize MRI as our ERP, which is how we have worked with Redirect in the past.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kasey. So for anyone who's joining us today that might not be as familiar with what Redirect does, we've been around for a little over 20 years, and our primary goal is to be a strategic partner to the real estate companies we work with. That includes providing services around MRI and Yardi, both on the technical and software side of things, projects such as data conversions, implementations, training, things of that nature. But we also do a lot of support services. We have a help desk for both software solutions. We also, as I mentioned, do some robotic process automation work, which we include an evaluation of in any process reviews that we do. But the main focus of our conversation today is going to be focused on the business consulting. And one of the things that makes Redirect unique from a lot of software consultants that are out there is our folks have real estate and accounting real world experience. For instance, Carmen worked as a controller for a number of years, Jonathan has CPA experience. So that allows us to combine our technology expertise with our real estate experience and help companies identify ways that they can operate more efficiently, get a little bit more out of their software, because we know that's really kind of the engine that drives real estate companies, and they're paying a lot of money for the software, so it should work for you, not the other way around. So our business process review at a high level is designed to identify the areas of a company's business that may not be fully functioning at the highest level, conduct a series of interviews on those areas so we can understand the current state of the business and the operations. And that allows us to figure out where the gaps in efficiency are, and then finally make recommendations on different ways the company can improve in their usage of technology and other ways that they might be able to change up operations a little bit to get that efficiency that you're looking for. So with all that being said, Jonathan, I want to bring you in as someone who is kind of in the room for these interviews and helping make these recommendations and understanding ways to get more out of software and technology, and kind of get your take on what you see in these sessions and kind of where you really derive value in sitting in the room with various clients.
Sure. We usually lead with the client's pain points. It's usually the case is someone knows, we're doing things that they're taking a while, they're repetitive, we lose accuracy in some cases, so we kind of focus on those areas. And, working with multiple clients, we get to see, clients that we get to learn from all our clients and develop best practices also from our experience. So usually from these interviews, we'll take a pain point, and then the first thing to do is optimize the use of the existing software. So is there a Yardi module that we're not using today, or are we using it but halfway, or did we not really put a lot of thought into deploying it and training folks? And then sometimes we find that we're using it, it's doing everything it can, it's reached its capacity, but there's still a lot of manual repetitive processes or number crunching in Excel, etc. And that's where we get to layer on top with the robotic process automation, developing custom bots to meet the client's needs. We've done a lot of bank rec reporting work, so automating bank recs with high levels of accuracy, automating distribution of reports. So Yardi spits out a great financial or MRI. We did a financial format or a custom account tree, but we still have to email it to 100 people. So the bots kind of help take up that low value work. So we usually start with the pain points, and it can touch a number of areas across the organization. But usually there is some efficiency to be found. Occasionally we'll come across and, not sure how much more we could take it, but it's usually we find ways to make it better and measure and analyze it with a strategic way.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Kasey, from your side, I'm curious, having gone through this process recently, and what your experience was, and actually going through the process, and what worked during the project, other areas you might have wanted to take a look at. Any insight you have into that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a smaller team, and we don't have internal IT resource that helps us with our tools. So we kind of started down the process thinking it'd be a good, get our feet wet with redirect, see what they could help us with. We were kind of thinking on a miniature scale, but it was really good working with Carmen, and she walked through the process with us. And then I think helped us take us up a step and step back and look. Carmen helped us to kind of group our issues together. And what we thought we were going to go through with some like minor report tweaks or some process flows ended up kind of turning into a system evaluation, and taking a look at possible re-implementation of our existing system, and also getting some other vendors to weigh in and get some pricing and see if there was alternate solutions out there for us. So it definitely, we thought it was going to be something, and it ended up being something quite a bit different. But I think it helped to work with Redirect and Carmen to kind of group our issues and see a larger picture of kind of the issues we were experiencing.
Yeah, and that's something that happens frequently during these projects that Grace probably has some insight into as well. We start with these process review projects, and part of the way into them realize there's a very specific need. that needs to be looked at and addressed. We've actually done 2 process reviews with Grace and CDT, one looking at going through a successful upgrade of MRI, and another that was initially meant to look at the asset management side of the business, but really morphed into an asset management system selection. So Grace, would love to hear your thoughts about what the actual process was like and how you saw that kind of morphing and taking a new direction as we got into the weeds of your company.
Sure. So similar to what Kasey stated, we're a smaller organization, very lean. We don't have any in-house IT, and CDT's been around for 20 plus years, and we basically were okay with spreadsheets, the basics within MRI. So we had fallen very much behind in terms of upgrading. And that was affecting, our ability to be supported by MRI. So we went into it just saying, well, we probably need, a little more hand-holding and a little more guidance to just upgrade the ledger. And so, in that sense, Redirect was very helpful in terms of like laying out test plans and how we would go about this and how it would we would be able to get through it quite easily and quickly. But in addition to that, we went through what I think is called a gap analysis in terms of how we're using MRI. And since I was was relatively new to CDT, we have like a ton of entities. We're a real estate investment trust. So there's like all these entities and projects and, how this all kind of like fits together. And I know that, the system needs to be able to support our growth. And so what we went through was this gap analysis that kind of reviewed the basics in MRI, our chart of accounts, our reporting needs, our joint venture reporting. And so what it kind of helped, it's similar to what Kasey said, it kind of helped organize and put a framework around, how we wanted to work within MRI. There's a lot of modules in there. We're a smallish company. We have a budget in terms of what we're able to spend on IT. And so Redirect allowed us to kind of get what we needed to get done at that point in time, but also kind of really go through pain points. Like Jonathan said, there were some quick pain points that we were able to address very easily. And then to have a framework in which to understand, well, where are we headed with this, right? And so that was unexpected, a pleasant outcome of it. And based on that, we underwent another analysis with Redirect in terms of an asset management database. And we didn't know much about it, but we wanted an independent consultant to help us evaluate asset management databases. And so, it's been really great.
Well, it's great to hear that the results have been aligned with what you're hoping for, and for everyone who's in attendance, along with our business process review offering, we do system selection projects as well to help companies who are looking for a specific piece of software, whether it be property management, accounting, or something more specific like an asset management system, an investment portal, or maybe it's a job cost and construction management software, where we help identify the specific needs and what the highest priorities are going to be for a specific company, and then develop a scoring matrix essentially that we can evaluate various vendors against and really do a very specific project for a company based on what their exact needs are going to be to identify what the best fit for them is going to be. We get questions all the time, what's better, Yardi or MRI, or what is the best investor CRM? And the reality is the answer is different for every company. So without really understanding the needs, it's tough to make that recommendation blind. Kind of feeding off of that, Carmen, having done a lot of these business process reviews and system selections, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around differences in expectation versus reality, both as the consultant going into a project, thinking, one thing about a company and then finding out other areas that might need to be looked at, and also, feedback you get from the client perspective on what they initially expected the project to be versus what the end result turned out to be.
Sure, thank you, Sam. Probably one of the biggest areas that we see expectation differences is the client very often is frustrated with one part of the software and they want to focus on that. And what they're forgetting about is all of the reporting that they're still doing in Excel, or they're exporting data and manipulating it from the database. And so one of the areas that we like to focus on, both with system selections and with business process reviews, is identifying all of those manual processes. And a lot of times what we find is maybe the training, if this is a business process review, maybe the training wasn't as thorough as it needed to be at implementation, if it's a client that recently went onto the software, or if it's a client that's been on the software a long time. A lot of times the people we're working with learned the software from their predecessor at the company and have never had any formal training on the software. And so there's a lot of, in both Yardi and MRI, there's a lot of standard reports that both of those systems have that a lot of people just aren't even aware even exist. For example, both of the products have come out with some fairly sophisticated reporting in just the last few years. And people who haven't gone through formal introduction to those, unless they're really curious and they just go looking for the information in the software, they don't know it's there. So a lot of times we like to take all that manual reporting and show what can be done in the system through the standard system setup. And then we also bring in our technical team and talk about customized reporting. We can do that in both Yardi and MRI, have customized reporting. Sometimes it includes training the client on how to write their own reports, and sometimes we take on that work for them. A couple of the other areas that we find are pieces that people don't always quite realize that they need or want is automation. Again, both of these softwares have come up with a lot of automation capabilities in the last few years, and tapping into what the software has, and then also tapping into our robotic process automation piece to be able to supplement that automation is streamlining the workday considerably. One of the big things that came out of COVID, and most of you are aware of this, is we started realizing how much we actually had to go into the office to take care of. If it's rent payments that we're posting, or it's payable runs that need to be done by check, both of those areas are areas that can very easily be streamlined in your software system. And so most companies came in knowing they needed to streamline their AP payment processing and their cash receipt processing. And so those are two areas that have been kind of a big focus lately. But where we can take it a little further is, even though the software may not have written a specific case for automating a piece of it that you may see as necessary, the robotic process automation very often can handle that automation. We also see issues with integrations between different programs. So especially with MRI, there's a lot of best in breed programs out there that interface with MRI. And I'm finding that a lot of companies will have programs that do interface with MRI, but they've never set up those integrations. So whether it's your work order system, or it's your fixed asset system, or your AP system, you may be manually pulling the data from one system and importing it into your ERP system. And we can help with automation of that process to make it much more seamless and happen more often.
Thanks,
the other area.
Oh, keep going. No, I love it.
I've got one more item, Sam, I promise.
Yeah, no, it's great.
One more area, and that we've talked about, and Kasey, this is a big one in your business process review that we talked about was the concept of workflows. And with you guys, it was the AP workflows that became, we began to understand the need for kind of streamlining those workflows and really looking at them and finding out if they were the most efficient that can happen. And that happens a lot with business process reviews. You've had the same workflows going on for so long, and maybe your staff has changed, or maybe the roles are not what they were when they originally set them up. And we help a lot with either streamlining the workflows or resetting the workflows. We have one client that called us because their one Yardi admin person that understood how to change the workflows had left the company, and they had a whole change in staff and nobody had any idea how to fix their workflows. So it's something we can come in, we can talk to you, we can understand what your process needs to be and what it is currently, and help streamline those workflows, whether it's accounts payable or your AR processing, or the difference between the work that your property management team is doing versus your accounting team. There's a lot we can help with that as well.
Awesome. And just for anyone who's joining us and isn't familiar with robotic process automation, at a high level, we're able to take a computer program and have it automate a manual workflow, typically looking for types of tasks that are time consuming, happening frequently, monotonous, something like data entry. Some specific examples would be journal entries, automated bank reconciliation processes, booking mortgages and rents, things along those lines. And happy to answer any questions after this, or if anyone has questions as we're discussing these various topics, please feel free to put them in the chat. So Kasey and Grace, whoever wants to take this one first on differences in expectation versus reality, especially since both of you have gone through a process review and a system selection. Be curious to hear what you were expecting going into it, especially the first time around, and some of the ways that it met your expectations, and other ways that not necessarily didn't meet expectations, but was something different than what you went in thinking the project would look like.
I'll start. So, I mean, I think it was, what Carmen touched upon. It was just like, we just want to fix this one problem. We just want to upgrade, right? That's it. And we need some guidance and handholding. In CDT's case, there had been turnover in the accounting staff. A lot of what Carmen said, people had been trained by their predecessor, who was trained by their predecessor. And, a lot of our process was maybe, from 10 years ago when our portfolio wasn't as large, and it generally worked. But as our company and our portfolio got larger, it got harder and harder to keep up. And so, I think that going in, it was just the one thing, but Redirect kind of helped us develop a bit of a roadmap in terms of how we should think about our technology and our process. And, that very much resonated with myself and the team. And I think it's not that, there were other modules, there was other functionality that we weren't even aware of. And so now that, we've gone through this gap analysis and business process review with Redirect, we're able to kind of take some of that and run with it. Some of it we may need to come back to Redirect, and we'd like some of that guidance. But in some ways we're able to go look into it, do the research, maybe work directly with MRI. So, I think there's a balance depending on, what you're looking to do, but that's what, the expectation and the reality. I mean, the reality in this case was much better. And so when we just went through this asset management database analysis, very much, and I saw it in the chat, it was very much understanding what our CDT's needs and what are priorities to us. And here are some systems, right, for you to evaluate. It was never about Redirect recommending a system to us, right? They were helping us kind of prioritize what is most important to us. And so that, we found very helpful, because ultimately it's going to be our system, right? We need to own it. And, guiding us in that decision-making process, we found to be very helpful. A lot because CDT has not, the technology, we hadn't invested a whole lot in technology, quite frankly, over the years. And so, there are some people who are resistant to it in the company, others more open. But as we continue to work on project by project, right, people then see the benefits, and it starts to energize the company as a whole.
For sure. And, we run into that at companies all the time, where there's kind of an old guard that is resistant to new technology. And there are, folks who really want to take advantage of it. And we find that going through a process like this that is thorough and really shows the process and what the end result will be and what the benefit is can really help people get over that mental block. Kasey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, because when we started working together, it was on a slimmed down version of our business process review that we call the focus process review. And that's, pretty high level, quick hit project. But coming out of that, we actually ended up doing a pretty big look at your accounts payable, not only processes, but actual software. So can you give us a little insight into, how that initial smaller process review led to a bigger system evaluation?
Yeah, I think we were hoping that process review would be a good chance to kind of get to know Redirect, maybe give us a resource if we had issues going forward. But again, what really came out of it was a few things. I think the system selection for our AP system was one of the largest things, but one of the other things that we had been struggling with quite a bit was just getting data out of MRI. So one of the other things that came out of our business process review is we did because we do use Spreadsheet Server as another reporting tool. And we had a handful of super user licenses that were distributed across our group that nobody was using or nobody knew how to use. So we did, I think it was like a 4-hour training with Redirect on how to build queries within that Spreadsheet Server. And that has been very helpful. And I think that's part of what I think helped us with the business process review is not only here's your issues and we can help you, but we also want you to learn how to do these things yourself and not just have to rely on somebody all the time. So that was a big part, I think, of what came out of that review. And then, as far as our system selection for AP, it was really helpful to us to have somebody who could talk to the vendors, even our existing vendor, to talk to them, to help us communicate and organize, to explain our expectations, and to kind of get that whole process aligned, because we certainly didn't have time to do that internally. And I definitely never felt like Redirect pushed us towards any software. It was definitely, what we were looking at MRI partners specifically. But we also looked at a vendor that's not an MRI partner that we had worked with previously at other roles. And but again, it was helpful to have Redirect organize that for us, kind of project manage it, if you will. And the other thing that they did, which became apparent and was pretty interesting, is Redirect spent quite a bit of time with each of the vendors prior to us walking through our needs with the vendors to kind of outline and give background. So again, it was a huge time save on our side. And we're still kind of in the process of moving forward with that. But overall, I think the value add was tremendous, again, because we are a small team. And I also, it gave us a lot of comfort with Redirect. So as we've looked at other processes that we'd like to move toward, we've reached out quite a bit now. And it's just nice to have a partner We're recently talking about moving, using Blackline. We reached out to Redirect and they were like, oh, well, we have, we can do that for you. We have somebody who just moved and help with the integration and the file transfers. So I think that the expectations were pretty small actually. And what actually came out of it was pretty significant.
That's really appreciate the kind words, and both of you hit on something that we really pride ourselves on and hard during the system selection discussion process is, companies all the time ask us, well, you're probably just going to push us towards a company that you work with and that will allow you to do more work with us, and that's really not the case. We take a very unbiased approach to those system selections, and at the end of the day, the process is the process, and the end result is we're going to make the recommendation that is what's best for your company moving forward, regardless of whether it's a company that we can offer continuing services on or a software we can offer continuing services on, because really our main goal here is to help our partner companies operate more efficiently and get more out of their technology, regardless of what it means for us and our ability to work together going forward. One other thing I want to hit on before we move on to our next topic, Spreadsheet Server, for anyone who's unaware, is an Excel plugin tool that allows you to connect directly to the back end of your MRI or ERD database, so that you can access and do reporting on your data without having to do data dumps or exports into Excel. Jonathan, before I tee you up on our next topic, we do have a question from someone in the audience. You mentioned automating booking rents. Can you expand on that a little bit, especially as it relates to having lockbox reports online from the banks and various income categories set up in MRI?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bots that we develop, specific to booking rents, we have bots that today log in securely to clients' banking online portals, download key reports, read them, interpret them, and based on the contents, it will book receipts from tenants. It will book bank fees as journal entries or payables. It'll book mortgages. So this is a broad category of bank to book transaction processing. Usually people have a team of folks. Every day they go on those bank portals, log in, download a report, scan for discrepancies, monitor for irregular, transactions. So our bots are doing that today for people. It saves them a lot of time. It allows them to grow, but they're, scale their accounting team, make a more lean and efficient team. And then the bots also report on the results. So every day you'll get an email. You could design how that email looks, but it'll say, this is what we did, this is what we found, this is what we didn't find. And this is what you might want to go look into on your own. So
thanks for that. And while we've got you already going, I'd like to hear some of the key areas where you've experienced on the consulting side, finding gaps and inefficiencies at companies. I know a big one typically is reporting, whether it's processes, use of reports, reporting tools, but would love to hear some of your firsthand experiences and what comes up frequently for you.
There's a lot of I would break them down by areas. So on the payable side, it's very common. We look at point solutions to help automate the payables and workflow approvals, purchase orders. So that might mean RPA in some cases, but it also could mean other systems like Nexus or Yardi's Procure to Pay. So the typical AP department of printing checks in-house and signing on the hard copy to approve to pay is kind of we've come a long way from that. So AP is a big one. AR we just touched on, making it easier for our tenants and residents to pay us. They pay online and it's a direct feed into the accounting system. Sometimes tenants will send checks in the mail. We could route that to a lockbox. Reporting and bank recs, I think, are the biggest ones. So bank recs is more on the newer front. We use these bots. There was never a good solution to get away from that tick and tie, the general ledger cash basis to the PDF bank statement. There's no way, but now there is. So that's really exciting to me because I come from the accounting background and done quite a lot of manual bank recs in my day. So it's really, I like it a lot to deploy these bots, and we free up a lot of time. People, and it's a lot more accurate. We know some days, are harder than others. So the bots never get tired, and the bots do it really quickly. So those are probably reporting, bank recs, bank to book transactions, AP point solutions. Those are probably the top ones that we uncover and deploy. That's in my experience. I think other I don't know, Carmen, if you different.
Yeah, well, Carmen, I was going to say similar question for you, but also, you've been at this for a little while now. Some of the areas you see are popping up more and more frequently now, maybe new functionality in these systems or just new challenges companies are facing that we had done a process review 5, 7, 10 years ago might not have come up as such a high priority.
Basically, a lot of what Jonathan was talking about, but the point I want to make from that is the need to understand your cash position correctly on a daily basis is a much higher need within companies today than it was 5 years ago. We found, especially with COVID and all the changes with COVID, that a lot of companies are really looking at, yes, I can log into my bank and my bank tells me what my bank balance is, but that doesn't tell me what I still have outstanding. And if I log into my ERP system, I'm 6 days behind on getting deposits in and things reconciled, and I don't necessarily know any fees that are coming out of the bank and whatnot. So how can I know my cash position right now? And so deploying some of the RPA solutions that Jonathan was talking about, getting daily bank recs going, and having all that automated gives you that daily cash position much more accurately, and you can be much more confident in the data you're seeing. One of the other areas that we see quite a bit of need is just in training, is formal training, whether it's one person in your office that needs a consultant to sit down and walk them through job cost and all of the features of job cost. A lot of times we get a very narrow view of what our software can do because it's how we've been using it for years, and we don't realize what else is out there. So just going through very specific modules and full training on it. Another area we see inefficiencies in is in security within those modules. Maybe the security was set up years ago and nobody has the knowledge of how to update and review the security. And a lot of times we'll go through that process with them and kind of walk them through that process.
Awesome, thanks. And then, Grace, specifically on your end, having taken a look at going through an MRI upgrade as well as doing a system selection, specifically on the gaps and inefficiencies, what were some of the areas that came to light that you might not have uncovered just going through your day-to-day without going through this process review?
One of the things that we're still going through, but it was highlighted in our gap analysis, is just like our chart of accounts. And the way that we've set up our GL structure in terms of entities that are consolidated, joint venture entities, ownership percentages, entities that have bank accounts, entities that don't have bank accounts. So, our chart of accounts got it is still a bit unwieldy, and we've all just learned to work with it. But it really is something that, I think that in order for us to, let's say, move on to automate consolidation, right, within enterprise, we need to really take a closer look at how our entities are set up and our chart of accounts. And so that, as we were just going through the upgrade, that kind of came up, and we were like, yeah, that's actually another project that we need to embark upon. And so, the inefficiency of having hundreds and hundreds of in a chart of accounts, every time you add an account, are you adding the account into all the correct places so that when you do your groupings, you don't miss it, right? In some report. And I would say that also, one thing that we've really benefited from, so we started using Spreadsheet Server just about a year ago, and we have a lot of internal management reporting. We have a very large board of directors who wants a lot of different types of reporting, and then we obviously have external financial reporting. We're a mission-based organization. We have a lot of grant reporting, compliance reporting. And so the ability to pull that information out via spreadsheet server, has been a tremendous help to us. As soon as something is booked, right, we can run a report. So, the inefficiencies that everyone has talked about, like the reporting and the training, we've benefited a lot in the past year through just getting formal training, first through spreadsheet server, and then also going through the upgrade. And it's just naturally helped us. Like the team now is like, well, what about looking into this, right? So now the ideas are being generated by the team, right? And so we're like, well, there's an ACH module and an MRI. Let's see how that works. And one thing that has come out of the pandemic for us, I think a lot of organizations, is that, yeah, we did still have a process where we printed out the check from MRI. We'd have to get 2 signatures, right? And so that didn't happen for 15 months. And so all of the things that companies are talking about nowadays, like things that would have taken 6 months, right? We were able to go paperless, right? Or streamline the process in basically 2 weeks, right? Because we have vendors to pay, right? And so, we continue to look at ways that we can streamline the process, but it's definitely helpful, as Kasey mentioned, to have an expert, a partner who we're able to, that we know that we can bring in to work through something, a process, or in a bigger scale. So I find it helpful to know that redirect, we can use them in a small way, which was like, call it spreadsheet server, or in a much larger capacity. And, I find that helpful, coming out of being with a smaller company.
Would love to hear that. Kasey, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. Specifically as our projects have highlighted your accounts payable processes, software usage, how aware of the issues around AP were you coming into the projects with redirect? How did those projects help bring them into focus? And then, what are you looking at as next steps to continue to solve for some of those issues that were uncovered?
Yeah, I think we were doing quite a lot manually in our AP group. We also did an MRI upgrade a couple of years ago ourselves. And with that, we upgraded the API with our AP solution. And that had caused a significant amount of issues that I don't think I was aware of. I'd heard little bits, but I don't think we ever really put our finger on it being, just a whole process with the API. We thought maybe we just needed a couple of reports or a different way to do a couple things. So I think that prior to redirect kind of grouping and helping us highlight all of those issues, those little tiny issues as relating to our API with our accounts payable solution, I don't think we were aware that that was really the problem. And we are still in the process with the selection process. I do think the process with redirect definitely helped us to think about our issues on a larger scale and start considering, before we were kind of like, this is what we have, and then we're going to make it work. I think we've started to realize with redirect's help that there are alternate solutions, and we don't have to make what we have work, and that we do have a partner who can help us, get to where we want to be. I think, again, because we don't have internal IT resource, a lot of the system movement is a big deal, especially when it's an AP process that touches so many people within an organization and all of your vendors. But we're definitely still evaluating and also looking at our payment process as well. So I think the process with redirect definitely helped us to understand the larger issue at hand. And I think too, it gave us the confidence to know that there was a resource who could help us, because obviously we're an accounting team. We certainly don't know how to manage through a poorly designed API. So I think now we feel like we have options. And I think that was kind of one of the biggest things that came out of the process with redirect.
Good to hear. And you know, one of the things that we really like to stress with anybody who we, even just conversations or projects, is there are so many software solutions available, and most of them are very customizable. And add on top of that the various ways you can do automations and integrations beyond what's already been developed. There's really no reason to be having to work around your software and what it allows you to do, or to be developing workarounds or changing your processes to accommodate the software. It should be the other way around. You should be able to run your business how you want to run it, and find the software or change how the software is used to fit what you are trying to accomplish. So one last kind of major topic that I wanted to hit on before we open it up to Q&A and wrap up here is ways to streamline the business without a big project. Obviously, both of our engagements with Grace at CDT and Kasey at Yes have led to some larger projects. But when we go through a business process review, we put together a big table of recommendations, and the recommendations can be something simple that will take 30 minutes to fix, all the way up to, you know, let's evaluate different vendors and potentially put a new software in place or replace an existing software. So, you know, Carmen, I'll let you kick this one off. Love to hear about some of the ways that it's, you know, easy to take this roadmap and not necessarily jump into a huge project, but take off some of the low-hanging fruit and some of the quick hitters to really help the business thrive in the short term.
Yes, Sam, one of the things we do when we put together our documentation for a business process review is we go through and we list out all of those items that we're recommending, and we put a value on them. Either it's a quick hit or it's a low effort project, medium effort, or high effort. And then what we do is we talk through that list with you, and what items are you interested in handling right away? What items are you interested in maybe handling down the road? And a lot of times what we find is a client will take a group of those quick hit items and those low effort items. We'll combine them into one SOW, and it may be just a very small handful of hours, and we get those items tackled really quickly, normally within 3 to 4 weeks of finishing the business process review. We actually have another client who is on a kind of a limited budget for her IT piece, and we've completed the business process review. And then what we've done is we've taken a very small number of hours each month and handled those items. So we went through and identified what the top priority items were, and we tackled those first. And then we just continue working through the list as the months have gone by. And that's also another way to kind of handle that process.
Kasey, thoughts on you know, adding some smaller items in with some of the bigger steps that we've accomplished to, you know, really help out and get some of those things taken care of right away?
Oh yeah, we definitely did that. And as Carmen explained, we went through the process. She explained like the amount of time each thing would take, and if it was like a quick hit, and we did knock a few of those out before we started the our larger system selection process. So, and again, they have all been very helpful. And it was kind of, you know, around our schedule and what worked best for us. And yeah, so it worked out really well.
Thanks. And Grace?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that as we went through the upgrade, we found some of those low effort items, right? Like our security settings hadn't been reviewed in years, right? Everybody was able to do everything. And so we were able to kind of knock that out. You know, we were also able to then pretty quickly identified that spreadsheet server would be a very helpful reporting tool for us, and that that was a pretty quick effort as well. So, you know, right then and there, security and reporting, you know, we were able to tackle pretty quickly. And now, right, as we venture into the asset management portion of it, right, that's it's called Investment Central within MRI. That's a much bigger effort. That's like probably a 6-month effort. But we've, you know, it's a way for us to bring in our equity portfolio into MRI. And, you know, we hope that we will be able to then integrate some of the reporting on the financial side and in budgeting, and, you know, go on and on. So, you know, we dipped our toes into this, right? Like we started with the upgrade and we got more confident, right? And we learned a lot, right? That it allowed us to then evaluate asset management systems. We looked at, you know, Redirect helped us look at other systems, not just the MRI system. We ultimately decided that we wanted to use the asset management database in MRI, but, you know, it's you know, all of the little projects with Redirect have led us to a much larger project now, which we think that we're going to get a lot of benefit out of.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And you touched on something that we hear at the completion of these projects all the time, which is not the main goal, but the companies learn a lot about themselves going through this process, and then also the documentation that comes out of it to actually have, you know, what the steps in a process are and how you operate down on paper, available to either refer back to or use for onboarding purposes, whatever the use case might be, is, you know, a secondary byproduct of this type of project that can be really valuable going forward. So, you know, I thought this was a really great conversation. Really want to thank everybody who gave us an hour out of their afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. You know, thanks so much, Jonathan and Carmen, but a really special thank you to Grace and Kasey for giving us some time and being willing to kind of share their experience, what their projects were like, and some of the benefits, and what their experience was. So really appreciate your time and effort this afternoon, and looking forward to continuing to take off some of those items on the recommendations roadmap.